Okay. All right. It has been a minute since we've been in Ecclesiastes. So hopefully you've had a little bit of a palate cleanser because we are going to descend right back into the darkness and depression of our our teacher. Welcome to reality. Yes, we're just going to continue to linger in this depression. So we actually ended on a little bit of a high note with the end of chapter 5, probably the most positive that our author gets. And so we'll just kind of review the last few sentences here before we get into chapter 6, where it's going to take a little bit of a downturn. So the last sentences were, "This is what I have seen to be good. It is fitting to eat and drink and find enjoyment in all the toil with which one toils under the sun, the few days of the life God gives them, for this is our lot. Likewise, all to whom God gives wealth and possessions, and whom God enables to enjoy them and to accept their lot and find enjoyment in their toil, this is the gift of God. For they will scarcely brood over the days of their lives, because God keeps them occupied with the joy of their hearts." This is the thesis of teacher. The end result of this book will kind of come to the same conclusion, that we are to find our meaning or purpose with the work of our hands, to do something worthwhile, to find enjoyment with whatever toil finds us in this life, because there's so much else that we might pursue that just results in meaninglessness. But as we get into chapter 6, we're going to question even the meaning of our labor or wealth or wisdom at all. And remember, as we do this part of the wisdom literature in the Hebrew Bible has a hard time even finding its own place within the rest of the wisdom literature. So we came up with a couple of terms that we might approach this with: a hermeneutic of suspicion, meaning we don't have to listen or obey everything that Kohelet teaches us, or we could come at it with a hermeneutic of acceptance, that we just believe that whatever this teacher writes is something we should follow and obey. We're going to tease that out in these next 2 chapters, where there's going to be some that we gravitate towards of this teaching and some that we say, this is really problematic. So let's dig in. "There is an evil that I have seen under the sun, and it lies heavy upon humankind. Those to whom God gives wealth, possessions, and honor, so that they lack nothing of all that they desire. Yet God does not enable them to enjoy these things, but a stranger enjoys them. This is vanity. It is a grievous ill. A man may father 100 children and live many years, but however many are the days of his years, if he does not enjoy life's good things or has no burial, I say that a stillborn child is better off than he. For it comes in vanity and goes in darkness, and in darkness its name is covered. Moreover, it has not seen the sun or known anything, yet it finds rest rather than he. Even though he should live 1,000 years twice over, yet enjoy no good, do not all go to one place?" Let's pause there. All right, this is quite the argument. A stillborn child is better off than one who might live, but a stranger will enjoy his or her possessions, and even having 1,000 children not receiving a proper burial. What do you make of this passage so far? What's the teacher trying to say or get at? What's at stake here? Yeah.
Why he doesn't enjoy them? Is it because the stranger takes them, or because he's a depressed person?
Yeah, good question. What's going on with the stranger? And the stranger is supposed to be just a personification of something outside the community or outside of one's own home. So someone that you don't know enjoys them. Is it because the person dies and this person comes in and steals them, doesn't leave them to the children? Yeah, it's not quite clear. Other thoughts? Yeah, Rick?
That he fathered 100 children. How much of that was willingness on the partner's part?
Okay, interesting. Yeah, if a guy's going to father 100 children, is the partner willingly involved in that? Yeah, interesting question. And this hyperbole, I think, is meant to coincide with another piece of wisdom literature where Job is favored by God with 10 children. And here it is 10 times 10, 100 children. Saw another hand. Joe?
Well, I don't know if it's true or not, but it's just where I was just thinking about the monks having the skull on the desk and the mental memory and the whole number of people die.
Yeah, interesting. Is this the origin of it? So kind of the question, the memento mori, having these mementos of death to remind oneself of one's mortality. That's going to be part of what the teacher is arguing here, that wisdom is not just understanding how to be successful, but understanding the limits of success or the limits of wealth, which is our own mortality. Yeah.
I'm looking back at the last chapter, chapter 5,
Mm-hmm.
and it's talking about be happy with what you do. And maybe that's the 6 is talking about what happens when if you don't, maybe.
Interesting. Okay, so perhaps there's this relationship between the two chapters. Chapter 5 says, be happy with what you have or what you do. And chapter 6 is the result of what happens if you don't follow that teaching. The result is someone else enjoys the fruits of your labor.
Just a more
Yeah.
emphatic emphasis of what happens when you don't enjoy your life, what your lot is, or whatever.
Cynthia? A way of saying money doesn't buy happiness. Yeah.
It does buy, it can buy you more suffering now.
It might even just buy more suffering.
Well, I mean, I see student housing, I see a lot of people as we get older, make more money, or get more money, and it seems to be like you get money and you have issues around money. If the money doesn't fix the issue, now you have money, so you have additional issues. So you need to bear in mind that it's temporary, and the thing about each drinking
Yeah.
to take advantage of the things that God gives you.
Yeah.
And not fixate on, because they talk about accumulating wealth, right?
Yeah, so Cynthia just reminded us of the complications of wealth and the extra problems it might perpetuate. This idea that a stillborn child is better off than he seems just such a dark conclusion. The idea being that a stillborn child that doesn't have the capacity to experience life, that the problems we come from are from our consciousness, that once we become conscious, kind of tying into the morality of the Adam and Eve story, which is this awakening to human decision making between good and evil, the stillborn child not having to be subject to that. I think this ties into an interesting epistemological question of where we receive our knowledge, our humanity. Especially today, we're going to be welcoming singers from Peppermint Ridge. Wendy and Shirley have been part of that program in the past. So it's a facility for adults with developmental disabilities in Corona. And so they brought their traveling choir to sing in the service today. And there are people who will make the argument that our humanity is rooted in our rationality or our capacity for thought. But then when you have someone with a severe developmental disability who doesn't have that same capacity, does that call into question their humanity? I think all of us would say absolutely not. So then how else do you define what it means to be human if it's not just our rationality or capacity for thought? Kohelet is trying to tease that out. And I think that's a live question for us. Other comments before I continue? Yeah,
I
Donna?
think about that all the time because I have a sister who's in memory care and has dementia. And I go see her every other day. And I see the 32 other people who live there and the quality of their life, at least from my perspective, their quality of their life is diminished. But I've tried to see beyond that. It is to my advantage to see beyond that. I see that a lot of them are just enjoying the moments that they see something funny, or the moments that they come to realize they have a memory for something.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them don't have a memory anymore. And so they have just sparks going all the time. And if you appreciate those little sparks, you begin to appreciate your humanity.
Yeah.
But it is sometimes hard to see.
Yeah. Thanks, Donna. Donna just sharing her experience. This is yours. Who is this?
My sister.
Your sister.
There's certainly one other people.
Yeah. So Donna visiting her sister in a memory care unit, 31, 32 other residents there. And tempted to feel as if quality of life is incredibly diminished. And anyone who's watched a loved one go through that, it is heart-wrenching. And so Donna, working on her own sort of spiritual perspective here and saying, where is the humanity here in terms of those sparks in the moment that folks with memory issues might enjoy? Yeah, because I think we would all, as people of faith, make the argument that these people are, of course, still human, despite loss of memory. And this is going to be part of what Kohelet will say is, and we've touched on these in these first 5 chapters, what does it mean to be able to live in the present moment, understanding that future fate is the grave for everyone, that sometimes we don't have any control over what may come, what issues or challenges may befall us, whether that's memory loss or anything else. And so what does it mean to live in the present moment?
Jacob,
Yeah,
I'm confused about the burial, not getting a burial. If
yeah.
it has no burial, is that suggesting that he dies in war and he's like, nobody knows who he is, or?
It's
or is it
suggesting that
something
these 100 children have all failed him.
else? Okay.
That despite having that many children, not one of them could give him a proper burial, which is the role of the children. Yeah.
So we know that for many, many centuries and in some cases still now, suicide in Christianity has been considered one of sin. What was the attitude toward suicide at the time?
That is a really good question and not something that I know offhand. So I would love to do a little research on that in terms of, because we're dealing with Persian times is when this is being written. And so, yeah, that's a good question. I'd love to learn a little bit more about of what the ancient view on suicide has been up until the present day. So good question.
It feels like I said depression because, I mean, you know what, many of us know what it feels like when you're dealing with someone
Yeah.
who's in severe depression and you can't figure out how to put that hope in front of them. And they do want to be gone. And it's just so hard to watch that. And I mean, equating that to maybe never having been born, I understand it's almost a sense of compassion because this person is in such pain, they'd rather not have been alive. That's disturbing.
Yeah, and we see that both with chronic debilitating pain, a physical pain, or a mental pain, an emotional pain. And knowing now modern understanding of psychology and mental health does change the entire way that we understand so much of scripture when folks are struggling with mental health issues but don't have the name for it, don't have the framework for it. Yeah, clearly someone suffering with depression. Yeah. All human toil is for the mouth. Oh, Rick, did you have something?
Just the very last couple of words in that is, even though we should live 1,000 years twice over yet for no good and dash, do not all go to one place. Is that we're in heaven? There's no hell?
Yeah. Good question. We really don't have an understanding yet of heaven and hell as we do within our modern context, so much of which is influenced by extra scriptural sources and not actually the Bible. So ancient Hebrew worldview is going to be nothingness, the grave, Sheol. So all are going to that same place. There's not a concept of this dichotomy of the righteous in heaven, the evil in hell developed quite yet. All human toil is for the mouth, yet the appetite is not satisfied. For what advantage have the wise over fools? And what do the poor have who know how to conduct themselves before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of desire. This also is vanity and a chasing after wind. Whatever has come to be has already been named, and it is known what humans are, and that they are not able to dispute with those who are stronger. The more words, the more vanity, so how is one the better? For who knows what is good for mortals while they live, the few days of their vain life, which they pass like a shadow? For who can tell them what will be after them under the sun? Some of the same themes we've seen, first 5 chapters, this idea of even wisdom itself or words, which are the manifestation of wisdom. You pass on your wisdom through speaking, that sometimes that wisdom as it manifests through words is so verbose that results in meaninglessness itself. And so we talked in our very first session about the contradiction of the fact that Kohelet says that words are meaningless, and yet we're talking about Kohelet's words by using our words to have a discussion. So is this just meaningless, what we're doing? We decided it's not, or at least we're going to pretend that it's not. But I think we're going to get into a really interesting verse in a moment here. But I think we've all seen when wisdom becomes so verbose that it does result in meaninglessness. When words don't result in action, when it's stump speeches and rhetoric. Yeah, Lisa?
I just, and that just with all of it, it just goes into like, it's just for the sake of that. Like I read the first, for all human toils for the mouth, if the appetite is not satisfied. The thought that comes to mind is like, this like immense wealth that these people have. Like, you know, I think of the babies and all the, like, how much in a lifetime do you need? And the more you pursue that, it just seems that this is where the more for the sake of just that, whether it's wisdom, whether it's stuff, it's that, one, you're gonna end up dead. It's all gonna, you know, it's like, that's where we're all going, it's death. Two is that there's no, it seems like there's no amount of satisfaction. Like, I just think like, I just keep thinking, how much wealth do you need for a lifetime? You can't even spend it, and yet you're still trying to acquire it.
Yeah.
So that really, like, note that yet the appetite's not satisfied. It just seemed like not satisfied. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I think that speaks of what's going on today.
Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of reasons that a lot of philosophical understandings call into question the morality of possessing billions. Is the state of being a billionaire a moral question? And there are absolutely a lot of people who say yes. And to your point, once you're at that stage to acquire even more, to what end? Yeah, there was another hand, Joe?
I was just struck by that verse 9, the sight of the, better the sight of the eyes and the wandering desire. I thought, you know, the sight of the eyes is what we see and know and have in front of us, that we can enjoy the wandering desire, making think of all the cultivated desire, our imaginations want limitless stuff, and we're encouraged to desire more and more.
Yeah. 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 So Joe just teasing out better is the sight of the eye, is the sight of the eyes is what is in front of us, what is in the present moment, rather than the wandering of desire. And tying that into this idea of whatever has come to be has already been named. What Kohelet is struggling with is viewing injustice and oppression and poverty. It's so entrenched in these other chapters. He's talked about this, or she or they, that it seems as if there's nothing to be done. And I think that's a feeling that we have as well. We work so hard on these issues, and yet there doesn't seem to be any movement. We've taken a step back as a society. How has this MAGA cult become entrenched? And how did we get there? Is there anything that can be done with even these billions that these people have? We just keep getting this wider wealth gap in our nation. And so is it futile? Is it vanity? We've kind of settled on, even if we're not able to completely eradicate the root issue, at least in the present moment, with the sight of our eyes, we feel as if there is meaning and purpose in doing something to make either one person or society at large's life or culture or approach better, more Christ-like, more moral, and that's what gives us that value and meaning. Whether or not we actually solve it is something that we can't know. But doing it in the present moment, what we have before us, is what gives life its meaning, is what we're teasing out. Okay. Yeah, go. Get at it.
Kind of on that point, and referring a little bit back to what Rick was bringing up, this beginning of verse 10 where it says, whatever has come to be has already been named, kind of echoing earlier when it says there's nothing new under the sun. At first I was seeing that kind of as in dialogue with Isaiah, like when he says, behold, I do a new thing. But now after reading it more, I see more the words of the prophets, Isaiah, Ezekiel, maybe Daniel, not so much as in dialogue, but as more of a response to this determinism.
Yeah.
It's like this message about we're not able to dispute those who are stronger. That is completely the opposite of the message of messianism that comes out of that prophetic voice. And I don't know, it's hard to have hope given the world situation back then or now, if you don't have hope that there is a vision or a possibility of a better future. That's one thing I think that the prophets give us that doesn't.
Yeah. Beautifully said. So Ben's saying, okay, at first thinking that there was some sort of conversation between this idea that there's nothing new under the sun, but Kohelet saying nothing new under the sun, the prophet saying, behold, God is doing a new thing. But perhaps it's not just in conversation with each other, but a real pushing back, a different way to approach what's going on. And Ben saying this idea that they're not able to dispute with those who are stronger, that sort of determinism or that defeated mentality, saying that the prophets are bringing a different message, that there is hope, that within God's order, the weak upset the strong. This is the prophetic message. It is the message carried through when Mary sings her song, as she says that God will tear down the mighty and bring them low.
The resurrection of the dead comes from the prophets too, and that is kind of contravening that concept of Sheol.
The prophetic tradition bringing in the concept of resurrection, speaking against Sheol as the nothingness being the final chapter or the end of the story. Absolutely. And so just tying in a little bit to what I was saying at the beginning here, we have an approach to scripture ingrained in us as modern Christians, that we read it and we take everything at face value and believe it in its entirety. However, how can we do that when there are such different philosophical approaches to even what it means to be human presented within the wisdom literature itself? Job in conversation with Ecclesiastes, in conversation with Proverbs, are just within the wisdom literature going to provide us with different opinions and approaches. Then you take that out to the Hebrew Bible and then to the entire Christian canon. And there is so much that actually contradicts each other. And so this was not a problem for the ancient Hebrews, who understood that part of the spiritual journey is debate, discussion, using our mind, using our thinking, having different thoughts and opinions, and trying to see what comes out of it. We've shied away from that in terms of the way in which religion has been used as a tool of power to say, here is a spiritual authority who's going to tell you what the Bible says. And if you deviate from that, then we'll launch a crusade against you. This is at the root of it, is to even have different ideas or different approaches. So absolutely, we don't have to take this at face value and say, okay, what Kohelet is saying is true. We need to bring into the conversation the prophets who have a different message, and one that Jesus is going to pick up on so much more than referring to Kohelet. So this is a good book. It's a problematic book. It's an interesting book, only because, wow, the Christian faith speaks a different message ultimately than what Kohelet is saying. We've all had these feelings. We all deal with these feelings. And so we don't ignore them. We put it into the Bible and we have a discussion about it. All right, good stuff. Okay, so we're going to get 3 different proverb lists. So this part of Ecclesiastes is going to function a lot like the book of Proverbs. And so this is one element of wisdom literature that was very common, was for especially people who were in power or ruling to put down their aphorisms. And so this is going to be a little bit of that. A good name is better than precious ointment, and the day of death than the day of birth. It is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. For this is the end of everyone, and the living will lay it to heart. Sorrow is better than laughter, for by sadness of countenance the heart is made glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, but the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. It is better to hear the rebuke of the wise than to hear the song of fools. For like the crackling of thorns under a pot, so is the laughter of fools. This also is vanity. Surely oppression makes the wise foolish, and a bribe corrupts the heart. Better is the end of a thing than its beginning. The patient in spirit are better than the proud in spirit. Do not be quick to anger, for anger lodges in the bosom of fools. Do not say, why were the former days better than these? For it is not from wisdom that you ask this. Wisdom is as good as an inheritance, an advantage to those who see the sun. For the protection of wisdom is like the protection of money, and the advantage of knowledge is that wisdom gives life to the one who possesses it. Consider the work of God. Who can make straight what God has made crooked? All right, so two different themes there to tackle. The first is this idea summed up in, it is better to go to the house of mourning than to go to the house of feasting. Thoughts, responses, agreements, disagreements? Donna?
Well, if mourning really is taking on that person's life, and a group of people are mourning that person, then it gives them power in a way by the fact they had a complete life. But if you look at it as just a bunch of people gathering to enjoy mourning, I don't think that that's really something that God would want. I think it's the totality of our lives.
Okay, interesting. I like that. Yeah, thanks, Donna. Let's go to Cynthia and then over to Shirley.
It sounds like this concept of life and suffering. So this you're at least released from the suffering of life. That sounds very negative, but it's more of a detachment. Apparently, from what I've read, reincarnation is not viewed as a soul being reincarnated, but our rising desires for things, re-embodying over and over again, which is really speaking about the last previous verses. Attached to love is suffer. So that's what I'm thinking.
All right.
Death brings, in this case, a permanent release from
Yeah.
lives and desires, things that are more than we need, that are not like.
Okay. Cynthia bringing in this Buddhist concept of life as suffering and detachment from life as freedom from suffering, or as wealth being the attachment to suffering. Yeah, Shirley? And then
Well, I
Judith?
guess life either has the purpose of just having a lot of fun, or for some of us, it's more about growing, improving, gaining insight. And I would certainly say that in my experience, although I've enjoyed fun, I've certainly grown more through the times of mourning or difficulty. And so in that sense, I can see it as beneficial.
Okay, Shirley taking a realist approach. Yeah, laughing, having fun, it's great. But in terms of the experiences that have led to growth or development, if we're seeing that as something that we're striving for, it is certainly those moments of sadness or grief that have caused growth. Yeah, thanks for that, Shirley. Judith?
My sister died last week.
Oh, geez. I'm sorry.
The house of the morning. It doesn't resonate for me today.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking of the rituals we go through when someone dies. We go to the house of mourning, or to church, or to the service, and then we have a feast. And we start to tell stories that make us laugh about the person, and to try to relieve the grief through being in the house of feasting. So all of it's just hard for me to comprehend today, maybe more than last week or next week.
Yeah, thank you for that. Judith shared that her sister died last week. And so being in the house of mourning now, but also thinking about the rituals of how we mourn, that we do a memorial service, and then we often go into a reception that's meant to be a feast or a celebration of one's life, a memory. Kohelet's going to end this chapter praising moderation, and Proverbs get their bread and butter from setting up these dichotomies that life experience usually says it's not an either or. It's not just mourning or just feasting. So I like that you're saying even our rituals of death are not just mourning, but they're a combination of mourning and feasting. Other thoughts? Yeah,
Question.
Donna, question?
Is it the Hindus or is it the Buddhists who talk about the Atma? When the person dies and their droplets go into the big pool, which is called Atman, I believe. I can't remember if that's a Buddhist thing. But anyway, I always loved that when I first read about it because it was very comforting as opposed to this is the end of your life, you know, because the way they look at it is life doesn't end and it keeps on. It's just you're not an individual anymore, but you're in a great pool or something that is greater than you.
Yeah, thanks. So Donna, kind of tying into some of Cynthia's comments about the idea of there is no finite idea of life, that things continue on. Yeah. Other thoughts? Yeah, Ben, then Lisa.
I just get some consolation from this, the heart of the wise in the house of mourning, because I feel like I live there. And it just, you know, if death and the misery of the poor is the reality, then those people that live in the house of feasting, they're just not dealing with reality. And those of us that are connected with people in their suffering, we have a more realistic concept of just what life is about. So, and I think that's what wisdom comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is at the heart of what Gohel is trying to say here, is to take this realist approach to the world and say that the heart of fools who live in the house of mirth are so busy feasting and celebrating constantly. This is where they live. This is where they dwell, that they don't understand human suffering. And so it's actually better to live in the suffering so that you understand the way the world works. Lisa, your face is
I just think that's
scrunched.
too black and white.
Okay.
I sit and read people all day because of my job, and so when you're absorbed in misery and you're absorbed in sad, and no doubt, like a friend of mine and I go back and forth about this because I don't think that necessarily, how do we say, I don't know how to say that. I think that gets people stuck. I don't think that then you look at options that are available, and I don't want to like Pollyanna-ish everything, because I think our default of our brain is negative. That's just a default. I think it's a survival technique, and so it's not that difficult to look at all the bad. And years ago, a pastor said, I love this. It's like two men look out of prison bars. One looks down and sees dirt. The other one looks up and sees stars. So I really believe once again, I think it's like looking at life, not in mirth and joy, like even people that are pursuing, if you're like, I don't know people that are happy all the time just because they look like it. I think they can have everything. You have beauty, wealth, and they're still can be miserable inside. So I do think there's something to be said. I think this once again is way too black and white. And so I think it's like when you talk like if it's only the pursuit of that, and I would say if people just are sitting in sadness, that's not healthy either. I guess I'm looking at like, how do we look at those moments of joy and gratitude, even in the midst of suffering? Like, because if not, then there's no hope. And then what do you do with that? Like, I just think it keeps you stuck in that and it perpetuates that stuff. So it's a long ass answer. But I can maybe because I struggle with this every day with people that are like wanting, you know, like I have a person right now, I'm holding my breath there, like, he's suicidal, like, so, and I'm like, and you're right, he's still in hope, if he gets stuck in this, what he thought was happy, and like, I think it was an illusion, and so, but looking at anything else is like, it's just, they're locked, and it's like, I'm like, so, anyway.
I think that's an excellent defense for this middle ground. That these, like I said, these proverbs are trying to put us in one camp or the other, but we know our lived experience is something else. And so the way you phrased it, I thought was great, that our default in terms of the way our brain is neurologically wired is to go to the negative, to sit there. But when we sit there permanently, does that steal our hope, our joy? And in what ways, even for the oppressed, is the exercise of joy an act of resistance to say that those in power will not steal the ability to have hope or to experience joy. And so, yes, we're not going to stay in the house of mirth forever, but there's also danger in permanently staying in the house of mourning, is what I hear you saying. I think that's good.
Because I'm
Yeah.
also, after listening to what Lisa's saying, I hear also the idea that if you are in the house of mirth, you have like two options. I mean, some people are there saying, thank goodness I'm not them over there. And
Ooh.
some people are saying, I'm thankful that I have what I have. This is wonderful. And I think it probably works the other way as well. If you are in the place where you are in need, you can either covet what other people have, which just makes you angrier, or you can try to find joy in whatever is there.
Yeah, thank you. So this idea of thank you that I'm not that other person. I hear that prayer found in the parable of the New Testament. Thank you that I'm not this, this, and this. I hear that prayer so often in today's age in different ways. Yeah, Judith.
I'm interested in the idea of that our brain defaults to the negative. This may be the conversation of two psychologists who view things differently. Because in my head, I don't know that there's evidence of that. And in my own way of being in the world, I think I default the other way myself. So it just fascinates me because I think it's very relevant to this whole idea of what can we do? Are all these problems just too much? No matter what we do, they're going to be there. If they're not over here, they're over there. If you default to the negative, it seems harder to maybe seems harder to motivate yourself to even try.
Interesting. I'm sure there are studies that will point in both directions, like on everything.
In your brain.
What'd you say?
Dopamine is a chemical.
Yeah, the dopamine.
You see it half empty or.
Yeah, and we're always wanting a dopamine hit. And so, staying in, I think we're saying staying in either of these houses is what presents the danger. And what's interesting about that opening, yeah, go ahead, Michelle.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't know that there's a deep biological default to one or the other, but like I'm watching my 18-year-old son not have what he had when he lived with me, so he's just now learning to appreciate what he had, you know, and it's like you don't know what you have until it's gone, until you don't have it.
Interesting. Yeah, I think Kohelet would agree with that. Absolutely. You don't know what you have until it's gone and what value it has. I think it's interesting that this chapter starts out with these dichotomies because we're going to get into a very interesting middle ground. So I'll give you two teasers for next week of what we're going to get to. I think this is a fascinating argument that I want to have a discussion with you all about. There are righteous people who perish in their righteousness. There are wicked people who prolong their life in their evil doing. Can you be too righteous? Is what Kohelet's going to say. There are people obsessed with righteousness, and it's their downfall. Let's talk about that. And then, sadly, we're going to get to like probably the most misogynistic comment in all of Scripture. One man among 1,000 I found, but a woman who is righteous, but a woman among all these I have not found. So we'll talk about what that means next week. Okay, all right, let me close this with the word of prayer and then we'll head to worship. God, thank you for this opportunity to engage in this ancient spiritual tradition of discussion and debate, to even end this session with these fundamental differences in what it means to be human. What does it mean to be human, God? Have you wired us for joy? Have you wired us for realism? How do we balance the two? How do we feel meaning and purpose in who you have created us to be? We all seek that now in your presence. In Christ's name, amen.